Hey everyone, Josh here, going live about mulberries and plums. We're going to talk all about the different types. We're going to look at some pollination discussions. We are going to taste some fruit today. So just a little lunchtime walk. So if you want to join, thank you for joining. We're going to be looking at this lovely mulberry tree behind me. I've also have two other ones. So yeah, let's take a look. So we've got this mulberry tree. And this is an Asian mulberry. And one of the things about Asians is that the fruit is a little bit longer than the American varieties. So we're going to take a look at this fruit here. So this is an Asian mulberry, also known as a black mulberry. So mulberries come in three different types. And if you're just joining, that's what we're covering today, all about mulberries and plums. We're going to taste some. So there are three types of mulberries: black, red, and white. And what's really interesting is that most of them end up looking like this, despite the names. So it's really three different types. The red mulberries grow natively here in North America, and you can find them all over in the woods. They're a little bit smaller than this. This is the black one, so they're a little bit shorter than that. Then you've also got Asian mulberries, which is what I have behind me here. And then we've got white mulberries. So we're going to do a little tasting today, see what they taste like. This tree has had thousands of mulberries, and it is not very big yet. So it's really only 3 or 4 years old, but it is producing quite a few mulberries. So we're going to taste this. One of the nice things about mulberries is it's really easy to harvest. So here's the little trick. I'm not going to do it, but you can actually shake the tree. So if you just shake this, all the ripe ones will fall to the ground. So just set out a sheet that you don't mind getting stained, because they do stain, and give the tree a light shake and all the ripe ones will fall. So this one I just picked off. It's probably about ready. Well, let's taste it. That one's a little bit bland. Not quite the ripest on the tree. Let's see if we can find one a little bit better. This one looks to be a little bit better right there. And you can also tell it's ripe when it just easily is plucked from the tree, and that's how you know that it's going to fall. Oh yeah, much sweeter, a lot more pack to the punch there. And one of the things too about mulberries is you actually eat the little stem. And I know people are like, oh no, I don't want to eat that little stem. It's fine. Just pop it in. You don't even taste it. So mulberries are great. I love mulberries. I actually have a couple different types, so I'm going to show you those. Now mulberries are self-pollinating, right? So you can just have one, but as with most fruit, it's better to have two different types. You'll get a better fruit set. You'll get better flavor. So this one here is a dwarf mulberry that I just planted this year. And you can see I've actually got it protected here with some chicken wire. And that's just to keep rabbits from nibbling at the base. So just a small protection. It's not going to keep squirrels off if they want to jump up on it. Squirrels do love mulberries, so keep that in mind. All right, and then next up, we've got this Asian mulberry that I just took some tastings from, and it tasted amazing. Right, so we've got this tree here, and with mulberries, they actually start out white, and then they get this red, pink hue to them. Okay, and then they eventually turn black, and that's how you know that they're ripe. So this is a very ripe one here. So you can see that this one is black. It's very ripe, and the most extreme ripe ones will actually be sort of like bursting out, meaning those little tiny round things will actually be a little bit more inflated. So keep that in mind if you're looking for ripe mulberries. Maybe you're walking in the woods, you run across a native mulberry tree. Always pick the ones where the black fruit is sort of bulging out, and you can easily pluck it, meaning I just barely touched this and it fell into my hand. So always a good tip. That one was pretty sweet. That might have been the best one. All right, so like I said, mulberries can put out thousands of fruit on a very small tree. This one's very small, maybe 7 feet tall. And I had thousands of fruit. But you don't want to plant mulberries anywhere near sidewalks because they put out a mess. And I've got just littered with little mulberries that have fallen. So don't plant one near your walkway. Don't plant one near your sidewalk. Put it in the back corner where you don't mind the mess getting everywhere. All right, let's see if we can extend this a little. Now this one here is my red mulberry, and that one actually grows natively here in North America, and you can find these in the woods. And now is a great time to actually walk around because the mulberries will naturally fall to the ground. They stain the ground. In fact, a buddy of mine were running yesterday, and we were on the trail, and I was like, hey, there's a mulberry. I looked at the ground, had all these stains from the mulberry berries falling. I looked up, and there it was, a mulberry. So that's a little telltale sign when you're going and looking for a native mulberry. All right, so this one is much bigger, and I think I've already taken all the fruit off of it. It looks pretty much the same in terms of the leaf. Not much different, maybe a little bit more oblong versus rounded, but these do grow natively. And this one tends to set fruit early, so sometimes you won't get berries if there's a late frost, which has been a problem that I've had with it. And I've sort of let this one get a little bit too big. But one of the nice things about mulberries is that you can actually cut them back really hard and they will just burst out. They're one of the fastest growing trees out there. So try your hand in mulberries, get a couple different types. They can get pretty large if you get the native ones. That's why I've got a dwarf one and an Asian one. So let's keep walking. All right, we're just gonna go to the other side of the yard, look at some plums. Ezzy's joining us here today. Ezzy, come here. Say hello to everybody. All right, she's pretty happy to be outside over this lunch break. We'll pass through the garden here, and then we're gonna head up to the plums. So any questions on mulberries? Does it grow better as an understory tree? It actually does pretty well as an understory tree. You'll just get less berries. So keep that in mind. You'll get less berries when it's got more shade. I striped the... Okay, that's an interesting one there. Every 3 months, so you basically cut it. You strip... I'm not sure I understand that, David. If you could repeat that. I strip my white mulberries every 3 months to get the most mulberry harvests. Interesting. All right, so just a quick pit stop. My raised beds are bursting with life. I feel like it's Jurassic Park out here with these squash leaves. We've got some great squash growing. Super excited about that. And we've actually got some cukes that I need to grab here that are pretty ripe growing up here. So we're going to harvest those when we're done. But those are looking good. It's just starting to get up the trellis too. Oh, every leaf I strip off. Oh, I see what you're saying. Thank you for clarifying that. Interesting. So that'll help with the harvest. I'll have to try that. Very good. All right, so we're continuing on our journey here. We've already covered mulberries. Here comes Ezzy. She's joining my buddy, my lunchtime assistant here. All right, so now we're looking at all the plums I've got. I've got a bunch of different plums. And let me just show you some of the scale of these plums here. And this one is definitely weighed down with fruit. So we're going to talk about two different types of plums today, and that is Asian plums, and European plums, okay? So first up, let's look at some European plums. I've got a French improved plum here. Now, European plums are actually a little bit shorter than Asian plums, more compact. They are a little bit more cold hardy than Asian plums, and they flower later, which is actually pretty nice because oftentimes if you have a late season freeze, your plums will set flowers, and then if you get a freeze, all the flowers can die off. Now there's ways you can protect against that, but it's pretty difficult to deal with because you won't have any fruit if it freezes. Let's go under here. Excuse me. And it's getting hot out. I got to stand in the shade. So European plums, more cold hardy. Another difference with European versus Asian plums is that they are self-fertile, where oftentimes Asian plums are not. Meaning a lot of Asian plums, you need to have at least 2 different varieties for them to pollinate, whereas European plums, you really just need 1 tree. Now, obviously, any tree is going to set more fruit with another variety nearby for cross-pollination, but getting fruit at all will happen with an Asian plum if you have 1. I'm sorry, with a European plum. If it's an Asian plum, I would recommend getting 2, and that way they can pollinate each other. All right, so that's 1 European plum. The other one that I've got here is this blue Jameson plum. And this one is pretty slow growing. And one of the things about European plums that's also a little bit different is the fruit are smaller, they're more rounded, they ripen later, but they still put out a lot of fruit. I've got a lot of fruit on this little tree. And I generally prune European plums to what's called a modified center, right? So it comes up here, and then I cut off the top around there. So we've got 1 primary, cut off the top, and then it sort of spreads from there. Whereas Asian plums, I will prune towards what's called an open vase shape, right? Where you cut it low, and all the support branches, I know it's sort of hard to tell, will spread like this. And here's a better example of that is this methyl plum. So whenever you're pruning your plums, you want to start taking them off early. I mean, this is only, 18, 20 inches up that I did a heading cut, and that creates really low support branches. So make sure you prune that way. All right, so that's European plums. I've got a little story about a European plum I'm going to tell that you're going to laugh about. So I was at Walmart getting some stuff, and I saw they had discounted fruit trees, and I love a good discount. I don't know about you, but I love getting a discount almost to a fault. And I was like, oh, they've got a Stanley plum. I've been wanting this European plum. It was under $10. I mean, what a deal, right? Under $10. Get it back, plant it. I'm so excited. Write it on my little map I've got. 2 years later, finally getting some flowers. This year I got fruit, and guess what? It's not a Stanley plum. So it happens to the best of us. I was pretty excited about it, but then when I looked at it, it's just another Asian plum, so the labels probably got swapped. Anyway, so always buy from a reputable dealer if you're really worried about varieties. Getting things on discount, well, you get what you pay for, right? Hey, it was still under $10. So, all right, so we're talking plums here. Let's jump back into a little bit of education about plums. So this is an Asian plum that I'm under right now, and it is just loaded with fruit, and they are just starting to ripen. In fact, I need to continue pruning. Ooh, GMO plum at Walmart too. Good point. You never know. I need to really thin this out even more, because this is pretty loaded with fruit. And in fact, every time I thin, I come back like a week later, I'm like, did I thin it all? Because the fruits just get bigger and fill out the space, and it looks like I still have another thinning to do. So always thin your fruit trees if they're heavy set like these Asian plums are, because if you don't, you will break a branch. They get so heavy, and those branches will actually get all the way to the ground. So you can see this one here is actually almost touching the ground, and I've already taken off half the fruit on this branch. All right, so let's do some tasting. Let's see if we can find one. This is a Santa Rosa Asian plum here, and it's got a few that are just starting to ripen up. So I'm going to look for one. Again, harvesting plums, when they pull really easy from the stem, that means they're almost perfectly ripe. This one could actually sit on the counter for a few days, get a little bit more sweetness. But we're going to taste it here over in the shade, because it's getting hot here in the Carolinas. If you've got questions about plums, we're talking plums. We've already covered mulberries. Quick announcement before I taste this delectable plum is I do have an ebook I just released. That ebook is all about container fruit trees. If you go to my bio, there's a link to my link tree in it. Portable Orchards is the name of the ebook. Check it out, download it. It's got a lot of value. I'm just giving this out to everybody, so take a moment to get that. All right, let's taste this Santa Rosa plum. It's getting pretty sizable. It's probably could get a little bit bigger, but It's definitely juicy. Oh, that is good. Usually they're pretty tart when they're not perfectly ripe. And then that tartness subsides as it ripens on the tree. And it will actually be sweeter if you take it and sit it on the counter for a couple of days longer, or in a paper bag with a banana or apple. Those are other ways to ripen fruit quicker. That is very sweet. That one is actually pretty ripe. So yeah, so we've got a lot of plums to taste here. Probably got several thousand plums on these trees. So what questions do you have on plums? We've talked about Asian plums. We've talked about European plums, the differences in the pollination. I gave some pointers on fruit thinning. So what do you want to know about plums? I do have one other plum I was going to show you. And these are really more ones that I'm growing. And these are little Chickasaw plums, or American plums. And I actually had two of them. They grew so fast. Oh, good question there on spraying. I'll answer that in just a second. They grow so fast, these Chickasaw plums, and they send out suckers. So be cautious if you get a Native American or a native plum, which is an American plum variety, because they'll almost form like a briar bush situation versus an actual tree. So I had two of these trees, and those suckers would come out in my yard. They were coming out in the garden. Eventually, I took them down because it was just spreading so intensely. But they had tons of little smaller plums, rounder, much tartar. I didn't like them as much. They're great for wildlife. But yeah, they're fun. I love all types of fruit. I am fruit agnostic. So, all right. So do I spray my trees? I have not sprayed my trees unless I have an issue. So issues would be any type of rust, right? Cedar apple rust is something that I struggle with here. And copper fungicide is a really good spray for that. I've also had to do neem oil sprays before when I've got heavy infestations of aphids of different types. That's a good one you can do. There are some general sprays. I don't like to spray my trees unless I have a particular problem that I'm trying to solve, because a lot of times you can really fix problems by using companion planting, proper spacing for airflow, proper pruning, and attracting those bugs that would eat up your tree with other plants. That's another good technique. And lastly, I just have so many fruits that I'm okay with losing some to bugs, right? I'm okay with a little bit of disease on some parts of it, as long as I get something out of that tree of significance. So I'm not a huge fan of spraying unless I have to. Great question. Any other questions before we wrap it up today? Yep, so mulberries and plums, definitely two of my favorite fruits. Another quick, fun story about mulberries. Mulberries are actually the only thing that silkworms will eat. So, you've worn silk. Silk's produced from worms coming out of these little caterpillars. And now over in Asia and Vietnam, they actually fry those little things and eat them. I don't do that. But it is interesting to know that those caterpillars actually eat mulberry leaves, and that's how silk is produced. And that's the only plant. So that's something that you'll see on some mulberry trees. All right. Well, I got to get back to work. So hope you all enjoyed this lunch break. Remember, check out my ebook. It is in my bio. It's free download. It's got lots of great value in container fruit trees. I have another webinar coming called the ABCs of fruit trees. I'm hoping to put out maybe next week or the week after. I'm going to send out some announcement on that, so stay tuned. Otherwise, appreciate y'all diving into my live sessions. I'm trying to do these as much as I can, and have a great rest of your lunch break. Thanks.